Okay. And then let's get rid of the slide deck then and start moving to the next part of the program. And then Francia is joining us as well.
All right. I think whenever the congressman is ready, we're going to start our candidate interviews with Congressman Seth Moulton. Just to give some general ground rules, so I don't repeat myself every time. My colleague on board, Francia, and I will be doing the questioning. We have a mostly shared pool of questions. Each candidate will be asked one personalized question. Full disclosure, this will be the hardest question for them, we think. That was our hope. Louder! Sorry, there we go.
There you go.
All right, so we're going to start our questioning shortly. We're going to start with Congressman Moulton, then Senator Markey, then Mr. Rikleen. Each one's going to have about 20 minutes. Francia and I will be asking the questions. There will be a, there's only we have 2 mics, so we'll share one if we have one. Oh, okay, we have one. There's a mostly shared pool of questions. Each candidate will get one personalized question that we intended to be somewhat, I won't say pointed, but certainly a challenge for them. And we're going to ask that, the audience be respectful. Certainly, civic discourse is good, but make sure we're on tight schedules, so make sure we don't disrupt things. And thank you. I think is the congressman ready to go? Because if so, we can start with Congressman Seth Moulton.
Do you want to start in the
Oh, okay. Then we'll start with the original candidate, which is we'll start with Senator Markey, then Congressman Moulton, and then Mr. Rikleen. So the senators here and ready. We'll get started.
Can you hear me in the back?
Yes. All right.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes.
Something just happened.
Is it on?
It's on. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Then it is my honor to welcome Senator Ed Markey, candidate for re-election.
Please just watch out for the tripod there. Thank you.
Love you!
Votes for Mark.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't figure out how to shut it off.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's start with the easy one. To begin, 30 seconds. Opening pitch. Who you are, why you're running.
I'm running to fight Donald Trump every single day that he is in the office. Donald Trump is a walking, talking constitutional crisis. Every day that he is in office, every day he empowers Stephen Miller and all of his cabinet secretaries, but right now led by Kristi Noem and Homans and all of these people who are using a paramilitary force to occupy Minneapolis, who are undermining constitutional protections, who are using an ICE agency which should be abolished. It shouldn't even exist as it is. So that's why I voted last night no on the United States Senate. I wanted to make sure that pay would be made accountable. So that's this week. Although Trump gives you something every week, healthcare, education, environment, climate change, you go down the line, it is one ongoing crisis that Trump is creating for every single aspect of American life.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Do you consider yourself progressive? And if so, how would you define progressive?
I think there's enough evidence to convict me of being a progressive. On the floor of the United States Senate, over the last 1 year, I have voted against more Trump nominees and Trump policies than any other member of the United States Senate. I'm number one. I'm voting no. And that is because he is running a criminal enterprise out of the Oval Office for the enrichment of himself, his family, and his friends, and all policies are being compromised in a way that is undermining our democracy. And he does want to make America great again, but it's by making America hate again. That's his strategy. It is to make America a country where black and brown people have to walk around wondering whether or not law enforcement officials can just grab them because of the color of their skin. That's his idea of making America great again. And we just have to stand up every day, and I'm proud of the progressive movement. I'm proud of how, since day one at 8 a.m., you have been rising up and fighting in order to protect our democracy against this would-be king, would-be despot. And we're not just an ordinary state. We're Massachusetts, where the Minutemen and Minutewomen rose up 250 years ago to say to King George, no, we are not going to have a king. We are going to fight you. We are not going to be able to knock on people's doors without a judicial warrant and pull them out of their home. You're not going to be able to take people and to be able to imprison them or to compromise their constitutional rights without giving them all of the protections of the United States Constitution. So yes, I am a proud progressive, and I have been, and I show that every day that I'm given the privilege of serving in the United States Senate. Thank you.
All right, so some policy questions. A recent buzzword in politics has been affordability. We've heard it's a hoax. What does that mean to you? And what would your top priorities in making Massachusetts a more affordable Massachusetts and country for all?
Affordability means that healthcare prices are skyrocketing. 24 million Americans, including 338,000 in Massachusetts, just lost that premium support. There's a man in Natick with lung cancer who now has a $300,000 bill, not $30,000 bill because of that repeal. That's affordability across the board, at the kitchen table, on healthcare, because of Trump's assault on Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, NIH research funding. It is a direct assault. Trump is assaulting our energy. He invaded Venezuela for the oil industry, but at the same time, he declared war on us by canceling all of our offshore wind, which is our answer to having a long extension cord plugged into us from off our own coastline, so we don't have to be dependent upon the natural gas industry and the oil industry, what bought this White House. And the White House is just a wholly owned subsidiary of the oil and gas industry. Those are increases in electricity rates for people on cold days in New England. And the same thing is true for his tariffs. He does not have the right to impose tariffs. The Constitution gives that power to the members of the United States House and Senate. So those taxes on food, on clothing, on all of the products which people are buying is going right into those bills on the kitchen table. And that must be repealed as well. Although there is no evidence that the United States House or Senate under Republican control have the courage to do something about it. You only need three things in politics: backbone, backbone, and backbone. That's all you need. And the Republicans are not demonstrating any ability to stand up. And as a result, food prices, healthcare costs, electricity prices, All of the things that go right to the core of people trying to meet their budget each month are being assaulted by Donald Trump, and that's what I lead on. I was successful. In fact, the only time in the last 50 years anyone was held in contempt of Congress, ever, in 50 years, is Ralph D. Latore, when I forced Congress to hold him in contempt for destroying the Stewart health care system and dramatically harming the health care access for people all across the Commonwealth. That's what we're going to need if we're going to stand up for people and make all of those critical items affordable to them on their kitchen table.
Thank you, Senator. So it's already glory here today, so let's ask a question about young children and families. Central to any discussion of affordability is universal childcare, especially in a mixed delivery model that can achieve flexibility and cultural competence. Parents experience high cost, providers often lack stability, healthcare, retirement, liability insurance they have to obtain, and they're largely women of color educators, a workforce, often face insufficient wages. Beyond tax subsidies for families, what direct federal funding would you support to stabilize and sustain home-based family child care educators?
Yep. So, obviously, childcare has to be at the top of the list of the issues in which we deal with, because it will unleash families to be able to go out into the workforce and to provide care for their families themselves. But we have to ensure that we make it affordable. But we also have to make sure that that we have the workers as well to do that. And in the next 2 weeks, temporary protected status for Haitians is going to be removed. And a very large part of our home care workforce now are communities of color that provide that workforce. So we have to make sure they as well get the health care coverage they as well get the pay which they deserve. They as well are able to take care of their families as they take care of the families that have children that need care. So from my perspective, that has to be at the top of the list because that will unleash the human potential of those families, but simultaneously, we have to make sure that we take care of those caregivers who are there, who are helping millions of families all across our country, and then often not a forgotten part of the equation.
We're at 10 minutes left.
Oh, thanks. All right, so let's maybe move it forward. In that case, your colleague, Senator Warren, has framed a major political question as whether politicians stand with the billionaire class or whether they stand with the rest of us, highlighting that appears across issues of antitrust policy, healthcare policy, housing policy, the currency regulation, tech policy, and so on. You agree with her? And what steps would you advocate for in order to rein in corporate power?
Well, of course I agree with her. We work together as partners every single day on the floor of the Senate, and that's why Elizabeth Warren has endorsed me in this race for re-election. Yes, of course I agree with her. Obviously, we have a crisis in our country. Big tech, big banks, big oil, big gas. They have purchased this administration. They have purchased the cabinet posts of each one of these agencies that are responsible for standing up and fighting for ordinary Americans. And it can be Lutnick at Commerce, it can be Wright at the Department of Energy, it can be Burgum at the Department of Interior. You go all the way down the line. And each one of them is just there to protect the most powerful, wealthy, billionaire class in our nation at the expense of working families, of blue-collar and poorer families in our country. And they were able last July to extract a tax break for themselves. But what was the price that had to be paid? $1 trillion cut in Medicaid, $500 billion cut in Medicare, $300 billion cut in the Affordable Care Act, the dismantling of the Department of Education, IDEA for disabled kids. All of that is part of the price that these billionaires expect the ordinary families are going to have to pay in order to pay for the tax breaks for the billionaires. And so from my perspective, that's at the top of the list. My father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company. I am a United States Senator because there was a fairer America that had been created that gave opportunities to people where they would actualize their value in the building. And what they're doing on behalf of the billionaire class is they are looting these agencies and their programs that disproportionately now help Black and brown families. They help the new generation of immigrants in our country to be able to maximize their God-given abilities. And I live in Moulton, I still live in Moulton, and Moulton High School last year was 25% white, 25% black, 25% Asian, 25% Latino. Or another way of saying, the future of our country, where it's all headed. And the question is, are we going to invest in them, or are we just going to loot the system and give the money to billionaires? And that's what Elizabeth Warren and I do every single day. And when we go towards the microphone, you can see the Republicans starting to back up from the microphone because they know they are in a fight. Because we're not just the Bay State, we're the brain state as well. We know you have to invest in the future, and you just can't allow building that future. Yes.
Senator Markey, as of next year, you will have served in the U.S. Congress, whether House or Senate, for a combined 50 years. Wow. Thank you, an applause for that. So, why did you decide to run again rather than make a space for the diverse political talent in state? Or what have you not accomplished in 50 years that you expect to accomplish in another 6? And why do you think it would finally happen?
Well, I'm there because, I'll be honest with you, Donald Trump brings out the Moulton in me every day I get up. Because he is assaulting all of the programs that benefit those kids from maximizing their dreams the way I was allowed to maximize my dreams. And so this is the most energized I've ever been. This is the hardest I've ever fought in my whole life. And yeah, Bernie Sanders is 5 years older than me, but I don't think anyone thinks he's not fighting hard every single day. We want him there. We want him fighting every single day. And I'm with him. I'm with him. Even last night, we had an amendment to move the $70 billion for ICE over to $70 billion for Medicaid. We did that last night because we can see the whole history of all each and every one of these programs. And I'm committed to working on fighting this billionaire class. I'm working on the issues of the future, AI. AI is insinuating itself into all of the lives of every American. I have introduced the bill, AI Civil Rights Act, endorsed by every major civil rights group in America, so that all of the discrimination in housing, in employment, aren't moved online and supercharged with AI. I'll introduce the AI environment to make sure that the AI industry doesn't gobble up all of the electricity and force consumers to have to pay higher rates. AI in the workforce so that AI is not allowed to turn workers into automatons. AI and privacy and children so that they cannot compromise the privacy of kids in our society, that they wind up with serious mental health issues. In 2023, 1 in 4 teenage girls in America contemplated suicide. 1 in 8 teenage girls actually attempted suicide. 1 in 5 LGBT youth attempted suicide in 2023. The Surgeon General points the accusing finger at social media. My legislation, which I've already been able to have passed out of the Senate Commerce Committee, puts restrictions on their ability to exploit these kids. We have a mental health crisis in our country. That's my legislation as well. Workforce, environment, civil rights. and for children. And we also need AI and biowarfare and nuclear weapons so we don't get an accidental nuclear war because it's not human beings but AI that is making the decision. That's the future. And we have to be willing to take on the tech industry. We have to be willing to stand up to them and to be able to fight them and to beat them and win. So that's what the future should be all about. That's what we should be talking about. That future that protects young people, protects immigrants, protects kids of color, and protects their future as our future was protected by generations before us. Yes.
Time for one more?
3 minutes left.
Time for one more. All right. So you were here seeking our endorsement as you were seeking lots of other people's endorsements. You also make endorsements. So we were just curious to know from all the candidates, how do you make your own decision about who to endorse and when to endorse?
I endorse based upon whether or not that person is going to advance a progressive vision for the future. So I'll give you one example. In Minnesota, because Tina Smith is leaving, there's an open seat for the Senate. So Elizabeth Warren and I, we talked 6 months ago, and we decided that Peggy Flanagan should be the person who we get behind, and we worked in order to make sure that she would be the successor to Tina Smith. And Minnesota might have another race as well if Amy Klobuchar becomes the governor, and we would do the same thing. So what I tried to do, by the way, in partnership with Elizabeth, is what I try to do is to look ahead and lead the way, to make sure that there is a vision that people aren't looking to the past, but rather are looking to the future. With regard to the idealism that we need to bring to these issues. Because in many quarters, there's a nostalgia for a time that never existed that is replacing the idealism that we need to deal with our future. Because the past is just a memory, and the future is the hard reality of the poor, the sick, the elderly, the black and brown and immigrant and disabled communities in our country. And so the formula I use is I look for the people who are going to be willing to fight those fights, to stand up against the bullies in our society, to ensure that we are protecting those who need protection the most and making the enemies that all of you would be making if you were on the floor of the United States Senate as well. And I'm proud of the enemies I've made. Elizabeth is proud of the enemies she's made, and we're going to go and continue to make those enemies for you and to try to endorse the people who will come in and be our allies in waging that fight for a more fair, more just, more equitable future for everyone in our country.
Okay, so next up we're going to have, as I'm saying, I'm sorry, yep, you didn't see the thumbs up from back. Next up we have Congressman Seth Moulton. Congressman Moulton, whenever you're ready. All right, again, we always start with an easy one. 30 seconds, give us your opening pitch. Who are you and why you're running?
Sure. Well, first of all, just thank you very much for having me here today. Shortly after I was elected to Congress, I got the opportunity to speak to a factory in my district, and they said, come down to the factory floor and give a talk to everyone. And I launched right into this thing about how great they are for advanced manufacturing, doing jobs that are really important right here in Massachusetts. And then I said, look, I'll take any questions you want. And there was just silence. I said, really, no, I'll answer anything you want. You can ask tough questions, there's no press here. Total silence. And then finally, a woman in the back raised her hand, and she said, who are you? So, for those of you who don't know, I'm Seth Moulton. I've been a congressman for a while on the North Shore, but I've never had the opportunity to work with all of you. And so it's an honor to be here today. And I guess, look, my pitch basically is I'm running for Senate because I just don't think we can wait 6 more years for new leadership. In the Commonwealth, in the country, we've got a second term of Donald Trump. We've got a lot of people being hurt all across the country. And I think we should have people here who are fighters, who are willing to work not just for the majority here in Massachusetts, but build the majority all across the country. I've helped flip 24 seats with my organization, Serve America, from red to blue all across the country. And I also think we need to lean into the future. Yes, I don't have to tell you how terrible Trump is and why we're all opposed to him. But we have got to show that Democrats can not only oppose, but we can lead. That we can put forward a bold, aggressive agenda that will actually take the country forward. And I'd love to talk to you about that today. Is that what you wanted, or do you want longer?
No, that's perfect,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
We have many more questions we want to hear from you. So do you consider yourself progressive? And if so, how do you define progressive?
I do consider myself progressive, and I put forward a lot of progressive policies, like the most aggressive, progressive affordability agenda of any elected leader in Massachusetts today, that just firmly plants the flag in the ground. It says that 3 basic things, housing, healthcare, and education, are just human rights. They're human rights, it's not negotiable, and those should be our 3 for 30 in response to Republicans' Project 2025. And we can go through all the things that make that possible, like banning private equity from buying private homes, like building a fast regional rail network all around Massachusetts to make it faster than driving to get all around the state. Like doing east-west rail the way the rest of the world does it, to high-speed rail standards, so that you can get from Springfield to Boston in 40 minutes. You can do that in Morocco, folks. There's no reason why we shouldn't do it in Massachusetts. And there's too much old thinking on this stuff. Like the current east-west rail proposal is 70 miles an hour. It's to 1930 standards. No one's going to ride it. And it's not going to take people out of their cars. It's not going to build walkable communities. And it's not going to open up the 6 to 10 times affordable housing that exists today, just by making it faster to get around Massachusetts than having to use your car. So those are some of the things that I think we need to put forward. And the bottom line is, progressive doesn't work. It's not progressive if you don't have progress. You gotta actually make progress. You gotta do things that are gonna make a difference in people's lives. And sometimes it's hard to do that. You know, a few years ago, back in the first Trump administration, I decided to share my story of dealing with post-traumatic stress after coming back from Iraq. And I actually became the first sitting member of Congress to talk about my struggles with mental health. I'm very proud that there are several other members of Congress who have done that thing. Just when I talk about that, I wanted to release a mental health agenda. And the first thing on that agenda was passing a 3-digit national hotline, so that no matter where you are, no matter what phone you've got, no matter if it's the middle of the night, you or a loved one is having a mental health crisis, everyone knows dial 988. And it was a difficult law to get passed. I defined a Republican. We were in the minority. We had Trump sitting in the White House. And yet, after a year and a half of debates about how it would be funded, how it would be managed, how it would be staffed, even just what number we would use, we got that passed. Calls to 988 went up 50%. So 50% more Americans immediately started getting help in a crisis. But even more so, texts to 988, which of course are a proxy for the youth mental health crisis in America. Texts went up 1,450%. And the estimates are that 90 to 95% of calls or texts actually result in a life-saving intervention. So we're literally saving thousands of lives a month just with this service. And I was proud to author that bill, or really co-author it with a Republican veteran across the aisle. Because, you know what? We have to do things that actually impact people's lives. I was asked by a middle school group on the Capitol steps. You know, all the school groups come to Washington, and they want you to talk to them on the Capitol steps and get a picture. There's a group of middle schoolers who came to visit, and one of these kids says, "Well, what do you do up there that matters to me?" I was like, "That's a fair question. You know, Congress seems pretty broken. We're not really doing much. What matters to me?" So I told them the story about 988. And many of them have this posted, around their schools now. And I shared the same statistics that I just shared with you. Middle schoolers don't know statistics. It was like the least successful speech I have ever given in my life. I mean, these kids were just like totally unimpressed. But after they got their picture, a woman from another school group came up to me and said, "I'm really sorry to interrupt, sir, but I just want you to know that your law saved my daughter's life." And then she introduced me to her 13-year-old daughter. That's progress. That's progressive against Republicans who refuse repeatedly to fund mental health. It's getting things done that matter in people's lives.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna, so you actually touched on affordability question, so I'm gonna skip that one, and I know Flavia,
I'd love to talk to you more.
has a follow-up specific example.
In the what? Which one?
5.
Okay, great. So, so central to any discussion of affordability is universal childcare, especially in a mixed delivery model that can achieve flexibility and cultural competence. Parents experience high cost. Family childcare educators often lack stability. In the end, this profession is largely women of color educators, workforce, and often they face insufficient wages. Beyond tax subsidies for families, what direct federal funding would you support to stabilize and sustain home-based family childcare educators?
Well, it's a great question, and my wife and I struggle with this personally because we have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old at home. And so this is a real issue for everybody in Massachusetts, frankly, everyone who has kids in America today. First things first, we absolutely need to have universal pre-K. Universal. There's no reason why the kids of rich parents get to go to preschool and everybody else does not. K through 12 worked back in the day. That is not the world we live in today. There's literally no better return on even our investment for taxpayer dollars, if you just care about the economics of it, than having universal pre-K. So we absolutely need to have that. It should be federally mandated. It should be part of the new Department of Education that we're going to have to rebuild from the ground up because Trump took it apart. I do not want to just see the Department of Education rebuilt the way that it was. It should not be K through 12. It should be pre-K through 12 plus vocational schools. That's what the DOE should look like. Now, as for the child care workers themselves, do you know that the average wage for a parking lot attendant, which is usually male, is higher than the average wage for a child care worker that's usually female? So in America today, you literally pay people more to watch your car while it's sitting in a parking lot than watch your kids. That's screwed up, okay? And so the question is, yes, I support federal subsidies to this, but really the question is, how are you going to pay for that? Because a lot of people wouldn't argue with that. A lot of people would say, yeah, that's kind of messed up. How do we help these people? Here's the answer. We should have a wealth tax. We should have a wealth tax because there's a massive difference in America between the wealthy who have all sorts of assets, many of which they don't even earn, and everybody who's working hard every day. Right now, tax rates are higher for people who work than for people who earn wealth based on wealth that's just sitting there. It's not going to work. It should be taxed. And if we tax the mega millionaires, the 0.1%, we would raise $3.5 trillion to pay for this, universal health care, and other things on my affordability agenda. That's the key point.
That's quickly for which I get to ask you a different question now. So every day you wake up to news stories of horrific abuses of ICE. ICE agents, ICE teachers across the country. Do you support the goal of abolishing ICE? If so, what does that mean to you in practice? If not, why not?
I support the goal. I'm so proud that Senator Markey has followed me and now supports that as well. I think it's really important that we acknowledge this is an irredeemable agency. It needs to be abolished. It can start over. And I say this from personal experience because I was on the ground in Minneapolis earlier this week. And when you're there, you don't just see what's on TV. The images on TV are horrific enough. But there's a backstory to all of this that the people on the ground really understand. It's not just getting murdered. It's getting tackled to the ground, and after you're subdued, pepper sprayed, which I spoke with a police chief just last night about this, that is torture and abuse. That is illegal. That needs to be prosecuted, which is why I have led the charge to say, ICE, yes, it should be abolished, but the first step is these people need to be prosecuted when they're But here's the other problem that we have. How many people are opposed to Trump's immigration enforcement? Easy question, right? How many people can describe Democrats' immigration policy? That's a big problem, folks. This was the #1 issue in the last election, whether we like it or not. And so we need to actually stand for something, not just against it. Here's my immigration policy, and it starts with the thing I just said. #1, prosecute ICE. #1, prosecute ICE. #2, have an immigration system that actually incentivizes people to come here legally, not illegally. Like actually makes it easier to go through the legal process, not the illegal process. And then #3, we obviously need a pathway to citizenship. For all the people who are here, the people like Marcelo, who you all know, who at 18 years old was arrested and told he violated an immigration order when he was 6. That is absurd, it is inhumane, and it partly exists because we don't actually have an immigration policy that works.
Thank you.
Can we do a time check real quick?
About 6.5 minutes.
So if we can have 2 more questions?
Yes.
Should I do 2 in a row then?
Do you wanna?
Sure,
Go ahead.
all right. So in 2025, you were vocal in thinking Democrats have gone too far on trans issues, and you voted to express gratitude to ICE. In 2023, you were one of only 9 Democrats who voted in support of Chip Roy's amendment banning so-called race-based theories in the Department of Defense schools. Given the increasingly overt bigotry of this administration, what would you say to members of marginalized communities who were you won't champion it when it's particularly difficult?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you asked this question because I want to address my comments because I know that that people were hurt, that some people were hurt by what I said. What I was trying to say is that we just need to have a conversation about difficult issues. My voting record on LGBTQ and trans rights is 100%. I've maintained that long before in the past, and I've been a champion for trans military servicemen and women on the Armed Services Committee. Long before it was popular, I was a champion for that. What I was trying to say is that I don't think we can protect the very populations that we claim to protect if we're not willing to actually have a conversation about their issues. And look, we may disagree on that, and I understand that, and I'm sorry that some people were hurt by the comments that I made. I also heard from a lot of members of the LGBTQ community, including both co-chairs of the Equality Caucus in Congress, that they agree we need to have this conversation. Thank you for starting the conversation. So I don't know exactly what the answer is on this. I'm just saying that like immigration, and by the way, in the same interview I talked about immigration in the same vein, we need to be willing as Democrats to actually take on these issues because otherwise the only ones who will set the agenda are the Republicans. And their agenda will be hateful across the board. That's exactly what's happened in this Congress. They have put forward bill after bill that attacks trans people in America. I've voted against every one, but the point I'm trying to make is we have not had a legislative response. And I don't think that serves the communities that we want to protect. Now, with regards to the other bill you mentioned, I did not vote to praise ICE. I voted to condemn a domestic terrorist attack in Washington, D.C. It had one phrase that some people have interpreted as supporting ICE. Look, my record on ICE is very clear, and it's been clear for a very long time. But I just don't think that you should vote against something that you fundamentally agree with just because you find one phrase, not even an entire sentence, that you object to. I don't think that's the right way to judge legislation, because guess what? Nothing is perfect. Like, how many of you have bought an album once? I mean, I know buying an album is a little bit old for some people these days, but you bought an album, you're so excited about it, you love this artist, and then halfway through you get to one song that you really don't like. I just don't think you throw out the album just because it's one song that you really don't like. Did I answer your question?
Did you say Nicki Minaj? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted, the last piece of that was,
Did I miss one?
yeah, your vote for the Chip Roy amendment banning.
Oh, this is the only time I think in my life I've ever voted for something that Chip Roy has put forward. But voting against it was unconstitutional because we believe in a country where free speech is allowed. This administration believes that if you say something you disagree with, you should be kicked out. And this amendment was about free speech in DoD schools. I didn't like the context. I didn't like the specific language, but I believe that you should uphold the Constitution, and that's why I voted for it.
Congressman, finally, all of you are here seeking endorsements, and especially our endorsement. How do you make your own decisions on whom and whether to endorse?
How do I make my own decisions? That's a great question. So I mentioned this organization I started called Serve America. And Serve America is the only, everyone's got their political organization in Congress, but very few are dedicated to actually flipping seats all across America. But the model for Serve America is we recruit, mentor, and support national service veterans. So they're everywhere from Marine Corps veterans to City Year veterans, AmeriCorps veterans to Coast Guard veterans. They're people who've done something to serve the country in the past with the idea that maybe they'll bring a little bit of that service ethic, servant leadership, self-sacrifice to a job in Washington when Congress desperately needs that kind of leadership. And as a result of taking on a 9-term incumbent in my home district and taking a seat that used to take millions of dollars of National Party money every single year just to hold on to, the National Party used to spend millions of dollars holding on to my predecessor's seat. We instead have turned that district into a powerhouse that helps win seats all across America. And the last time that we were in this same political situation with Trump in the White House and Republicans controlling the House and the Senate in 2018, half the seats that Democrats flipped in the entire country to take back the House were Serve America candidates. And they included people like Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger, who are now governors. I introduced them to each other on the campaign trail as we campaigned all across America. And flipping those seats was absolutely critical to be able to put a check on the first Trump administration. Now, when I am endorsing these candidates, it turns out I don't agree with them on every issue. I endorse people who I believe are principled leaders for our country. People who can make a difference in the lives of other people. They may not check every single box and meet every single litmus test, but they have shown what it means to be servant leaders for the United States of America at a time when it's very difficult to do these jobs. And that model has been extraordinarily successful because not only did we flip all these seats, we turned out leaders. We turned out people like Chrissy Houlihan, who's a leader in the House, like Alyssa Slotkin, who's now in the United States Senate. Like, a good example of someone I really disagree with on a lot of issues, Jerry Golden. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but guess what? He holds the most Republican district of anyone in the United States. So if you care about having a hearing for your progressive ideas, we got to get people like that to help win the majority. So that's what I look for. I look for leaders who can really make a difference, because I don't think this is a time when it's not just to oppose Trump. I think we need to show America that Democrats can lead. And then we can not only win a majority in the House and the Senate, we can win a durable majority that will last for the decades to come. That's the opportunity that Democrats have in the midst of this horrific time in America.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. Take care.
And last but not least, we have Alex Rikleen. Alex, sorry, his way up. Thank you. Appreciate the attention. All right, so we'll start with the same opening. You have 30 seconds. No one's followed that. Who are you? Why are you running?
Hi, I'm Alex. Hi.
Oh, a little less loud.
There we go. I'm Alex Rikleen. I'm running for U.S. Senate because I think that Democrats in Washington have been playing it safe. I think that their strategy has been far too heavily focused on waiting and hoping that we win more seats in the next election or the election after that, instead of prioritizing the actions they can take to mitigate harm today. And I think that's dangerous. I think that runs contrary to what historical recommendations recommend for an opposition party. And I want them to change that.
All right, Mr. Rikleen, do you consider yourself progressive, and how do you define progressive?
Sure. I tend to think that labels like progressive, liberal, etc. often add more confusion to conversations because so many people have different definitions of them. Whatever definition of progressive you're going with, you're probably going to fit me into that. I think I had one no on the survey. The politicians who I'm most likely to agree with are Maxwell Frost, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Jim McGovern, Senator Markey. When you look at the themes of the progressive movement of the 1900s and the ideals that they were fighting for, those are the same ideals I think we should still be fighting for. But I prefer my personal philosophy of those kinds of labels is I try to avoid them when I can.
Well, about another label then. So a recent buzzword in politics has been affordability. What does that mean to you? And what would be your top priorities in making it more affordable Massachusetts and country for all?
Sure, I think when you look at the data, the things that are most driving that are housing costs and healthcare costs. And so our focus really has to be on addressing those two core issues. When you remove healthcare and housing, everything else tracks much closer to inflation. Inflation is still a problem. We should absolutely repeal the Trump's tariffs and take other steps. But we gotta address the biggest drivers. And the biggest drivers are housing and healthcare. We need to be working towards a single payer system, preferably Medicare for all. And we need to be building more housing. Just more housing.
Thank you, we can share here. Central to any discussion of affordability is universal childcare, especially in a mixed delivery system model that can achieve flexibility and cultural competence. Parents experience high cost family childcare educators often lack stability, and this is a largely women of color educator workforce that often faces insufficient wages. So beyond tax subsidies for families, what direct federal funding would you support to stabilize and sustain home-based family childcare educators?
Sure. I think that we should be taking steps to try to level the childcare funding towards teacher funding, and also we should be increasing teacher funding. I think that we should be, all the policies that were named in the survey. Again, I was supporting all of them because I was the primary caregiver for my kid for a couple of years because I experienced this personally. We looked at the costs of childcare and we understood that it was more financially stable for my family if I actually only worked part-time than if we put our kids in full-time childcare. This is affecting all of our families. We have to take as many of these actions as we can.
Thank you.
Time check?
14.
Oh, okay, great.
Plenty.
We have plenty of time, so I'm gonna go ahead and do both of them. So, every day we wake up to news stories about the heavy usage of ICE as agents and detention centers across the country. Do you support the goal of abolishing ICE, and if so, what does that mean to you in practice? If not, why not?
Sure. Unlike the two speakers who you've seen already today, I was calling to abolish ICE before this week. That's the reality, is while Representative Moulton was voting for a resolution to express gratitude for ICE, I was calling to abolish ICE. On Monday, Senator Markey was on CNN and asked 3 or 4 times in a row, do you support abolishing ICE? And he couldn't give a straight answer. I'm glad he's gotten to the point where later in the week, now today, he is clearly and affirmatively calling to abolish ICE. But that is where we should have been. We need people who can be leading on this before, 21 days after Renee Good's death, before 2 or 4 days after Alexander Pretty's death. This is something that has been obvious to most of the people in this room for months. And yeah, I've been calling for this for a long time.
Thank you, Mr. Rikleen. So this question, so you have never held elected office before or held a prominent role in advocacy in the state. So why did you decide to make U.S. Senate your first office running, and why should people trust you when you have no record?
Because the Senate is where members of Congress have the most tools available to them to be pushing back against this administration. And so the Senate is where I think that current Democratic failure is most acute. And I felt that this was a message that we needed, that frankly, many of the people in this room probably signed on to the April letter of last year to our congressional delegation calling for forcing quorum calls, denying unanimous consent, placing holds on nominations, using all of these tools available to minimize the harm that this administration is causing. The Senate just has so many more of those tools available to them. And despite grassroots Democrats around our state and around our country calling for that, our elected leaders have been ignoring it. And I felt the protests are happening, the organizing is happening. We needed to add primary challenges to the arsenal to push for this cause, and no one else is running in this race pushing that message. I had the ability to do it. Isn't one of the themes of our country that if you see a problem and you think you can solve it, go try and do that.
It's 11 minutes left.
More than 2. So Senator Warren has framed a major political question as whether politicians stand with the beginning of the past or the same with the rest of us. Highlighting views across issues of antitrust policy, healthcare policy, housing policy, cryptocurrency regulation, tech policy, the list goes on and on. Do you agree with her, and what steps would you advocate for in order to rein in corporate power?
Yeah. One of the things about being a senator is you don't have to have the answer to every problem. You have to know where to look for every problem. And I'm not going to come up with a better answer for addressing most of the problems that Elizabeth Warren is talking about. I'm going to look to her and say, hey, you've got a lot of great ideas for how to regulate and address especially the issues of extreme wealth inequality. How can I help you? How can we work on that together? Everything you just described, everything she talks about, she's right and she's pushing the right buttons. So yeah, let's support that. She's completely right on all of that.
Mr. Rikleen, so you are here seeking our endorsement and endorsements of others. So tell us today, why should we endorse you in this race? And what make you like different and a lead candidate to this year? Thank you.
I think that, there are 3 candidates in this race. 2 of them politically and ideologically represent the values of this room. And one of them is a part of the establishment. Of those 2, one of them is a part of the establishment, has been there, has been a part of and supported the Democratic leadership that a lot of us are frustrated with. And one of us is calling for change in our Democratic leadership, to more forceful use of democratic tools, to more forceful pushback, to listening to the largest sustained protest movement in American history, and more forcefully calling for their demands and respecting their demands and listening to them and heeding them and trying to motivate them instead of sideline them. I'm the candidate who's doing that. And I think that, I'm the candidate who both aligns with your values and your goals, and I hope that you'll agree.
Mr. Rikleen. Thank you so much.